Stay silent. Nobody's going to hear you way out here." The words came from Preston Hale, a silver-haired Wall Street mogul wearing an expensive charcoal suit that remained perfectly pressed despite the wind. His expensive leather shoes planted firmly on the wet wooden planks of Stonewater Bridge, a secluded overpass miles away from New York's bustling financial district. His hand gripped the tiny wrist of a trembling child. 7-year-old Maya stood there in her pink cotton dress, the bottom edge damp from stepping through a puddle earlier. Her curly hair framed a face caught between bewilderment and terror. Those dark brown eyes gazed up at the man she'd always called Daddy, searching desperately for answers, for mercy. "Please," she barely whispered. "I can stay quiet. I promise." "I'll never say a single word again." Preston remained silent, his jaw clenched tight as he stared down at the murky waters of the Hudson tributary flowing below. The bridge stood completely empty. No cars, no pedestrians, no witnesses. That's exactly why he'd chosen this spot. Helena had been very specific about that requirement. Isolated, permanent. "I thought you loved me." Maya's voice cracked with emotion. Preston shut his eyes briefly. A memory flashed through his mind. Not of Maya, but of Marina, her mother. The woman who once believed he still had some goodness left inside him. The woman who passed away before the secrets became dangerous. "You destroyed everything," he muttered under his breath, not speaking to Maya, but to himself. "You and your damned honesty, just like she did." In one swift, calculated movement, Preston hoisted the child over the bridge railing. Far below, the river churned ominously as storm clouds gathered overhead. Just as Maya let out a scream, just as her small body tipped beyond the safety barrier, a voice cut through the stillness. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The shout didn't echo from the bridge. It came from downstream. There in the water, standing waist-deep in the shallows, was Ellie Turner, 20 years old, spinning around in shock. She'd been cooling, off in the secluded spot, her skin warm from the sun, her wet white tank top clinging to her body, blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun. She'd discovered this hidden path to wash away the grime from a long, sweltering day working on the ranch. Now, her heart hammered against her chest. For one terrifying moment, she witnessed it. A small figure plummeting from above, that pink dress cutting through the air like a fading flame. Ellie reacted on pure instinct. She plunged forward. The frigid water shocked her lungs. Her feet fought against tangled weeds. The current tried to drag her sideways, eyes wide open underwater. Murky shapes everywhere. A dress, a small arm. She lunged and caught Maya just as the river threatened to pull her under. The girl felt limp and cold, but she was still breathing. Ellie kicked toward the surface, gasping. When they broke through, she held Maya with one arm while swimming to the riverbank, her heart pounding with a rage she'd never experienced before. When she finally laid the girl gently on the muddy shore, Ellie's hands were trembling. Maya coughed up river water, then curled into a tight ball. She didn't speak or cry. She just grabbed onto Ellie's soaked shirt with both small fists like it was her lifeline. I genuinely felt such relief reading this part. Maya was incredibly fortunate, wasn't she? If you're feeling the same way, go ahead and hit that like button or drop the word fortunate in the comments below. Ellie looked back toward the bridge. It was empty now. Whoever had thrown the girl was already gone. Ellie wrapped Maya in her denim jacket and carefully placed her in the passenger seat of her weathered Ford pickup. The engine coughed before starting. As she pulled onto the gravel road heading back to Judith's ranch, Ellie glanced over at her passenger. The girl hadn't uttered a sound since leaving the water. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Ellie asked gently, gripping the steering wheel tightly. No answer. "You're safe now, all right?" "Nobody's going to harm you here." Still no response, but Maya's fingers briefly reached out to touch Ellie's hand before quickly pulling away. Ellie's throat tightened. She had no idea who this child was or what had just occurred on that bridge. But two things were crystal clear. Someone had discarded this child like she was nothing, and whoever was responsible had serious power and influence to ensure she stayed disappeared. That evening, as wind whispered through the dry sycamore trees surrounding the Turner Ranch, Ellie sat beside Maya on the sofa in Judith's sunroom. Maya wore one of Ellie's oversized sweatshirts and stared blankly at the horses grazing outside the window. Judith, her grandmother, a widow with steel-gray hair who still carried herself with the dignity of someone who remembered every Sunday. Service rule, stood with her arms crossed. "Ellie," she said quietly, "you can't get mixed up in this. If that's who I suspect it is, if that's Preston Hale, we're dealing with someone who could bury you in legal problems before your morning." Coffee gets cold. "I don't care if he controls half of Manhattan," Ellie snapped back. "I witnessed what he did. I saw him throw her from that bridge." Judith glanced toward the child. "She can't give testimony. She won't even talk." "Then I'll speak for her." Heavy silence settled between them. Judith finally sighed and approached Maya carefully, kneeling down beside her. "Sweetheart, do you remember where you live?" she asked softly. Maya blinked slowly. Then, without saying anything, she picked up a pencil from the coffee table and started drawing. First a window, then a desk, followed by rows of numbers arranged perfectly with symbols, arrows, and neat margins. Ellie leaned closer to look. These weren't random scribbles. These were financial calculations. Precise, organized, sophisticated. Judith's eyes widened. "Good Lord, that's a profit and loss statement." Ellie felt her breath catch. She turned to Maya. "Where did you see this?" The girl looked up, her eyes filled with haunted intelligence, and whispered her first words since the river. "Daddy's office." The sun had barely risen over the rolling hills of Greene County, New York, but Ellie was already pacing the wooden porch of the Turner Ranch house. Her damp hair stuck to her neck, her boots still caked with mud from the night before. Inside, Maya slept curled up on the couch under a wool blanket, her chest rising and falling like a feather caught in a gentle breeze. Ellie's fingers shook slightly as she pulled her phone from her flannel shirt pocket. She'd gotten almost no sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that pink dress, the falling body, the splash, and those chilling words. "You destroyed everything." She dialed a number. "Grandpa," she whispered when the call connected. A groggy voice answered from the other end. "Ellie, it's not even 6 a.m. I need you at the ranch immediately." Lester Turner arrived within an hour, driving his rusty Buick and wearing an old wool coat over a wrinkled button-down shirt stained with coffee near the collar. A retired forensic accountant who'd worked for the SEC, he was experienced in tracking corporate fraud, though these days he preferred reading Civil War history and chatting with the Barncats. Judith met him at the gate, arms folded. "She's inside. Ellie won't give me all the details, but you'll understand once you see." Inside, Maya was awake. She sat at the dining table with a pencil and stack of paper spread before her. Ellie had prepared scrambled eggs and toast, but the food sat untouched. Instead, Maya was drawing again. Her hands moved with incredible precision, eyes focused on the page, as if nothing else existed. Lester approached slowly, squinting at her work. "She hasn't said much," Ellie explained quietly, "but she keeps creating these." He peered over Maya's shoulder, his eyebrows shooting up. The papers weren't covered with childish doodles. They contained graphs, arrows, cash flow projections, and what appeared to be a shell company organizational chart. Lester's voice dropped to a whisper. "Where did she learn this?" "She says it's from her father's office," Ellie replied, her voice hardening. "And her father is Preston Hale." Lester's mouth fell open, then snapped shut. Preston Hale, the golden boy of Hale Capital. A man with enough wealth and connections to make lawsuits disappear and silence reporters permanently. "That's a name I haven't encountered in years," Lester muttered. "He was on our radar about a decade ago. Too clever, never sufficient evidence. He..." flipped through Maya's drawings. This is incredibly damaging." Maya looked up, finally acknowledging his presence. Her eyes weren't frightened. They were sharp, almost analytical. "She remembers everything," Ellie said, watching her carefully. Every number, every document, like a photograph. Judith leaned against the wall, her tone cautious. If that's accurate, Ellie, this girl isn't just a victim. She's a key witness. Later that day, Ellie drove into town with Maya, sitting quietly in the passenger seat. They stopped at the co-op for hay and feed. Routine business, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every time someone glanced toward the truck, Ellie tensed. Did they know? Had they seen the same news coverage? Inside the truck, Maya stared straight ahead, her hands tracing invisible calculations on her jeans. At a red light, Ellie turned gently. What's going through your mind? Maya blinked. $4.5 million, she said calmly. Transferred to Atlas Global Holdings. That company doesn't actually exist. Ellie nearly hit the brakes. What? That's from one of the drawings, Maya continued in a monotone voice. Daddy claimed it was just tax optimization strategy, but it's fraudulent, just like all the others. Ellie pulled the truck to the roadside, heart racing. What do you mean, all the others? There are 14. Maya pulled a folded page from her coat pocket, one Ellie hadn't noticed before. On it, 14 arrows connected various entities, with names like Stonecrest Limited, Blue Arch Ventures, and Whisper Run AG. At the bottom, a figure circled in red ink. $37,800,000. Ellie stared at the document, then at the small girl holding it, her tiny hands still damp with nervous perspiration. She never seemed to notice. How old are you again? 7. And you remember all of this perfectly? I never forget anything. That evening, back at the ranch, Ellie and Lester sat at the kitchen table examining Maya's notes. Judith prepared dinner in silence, fried catfish, collard greens, and cornbread, the kind of meal designed to comfort the soul, though none of them had much appetite. Lester pointed to a line in Maya's handwriting. These aren't simple mistakes, they're deliberately falsified projections. Inflated. Earnings in the second quarter to manipulate valuation increases. And look here. These Cayman accounts match names we discovered in that whistleblower leak 2 years ago. Judith set down her spatula. Are you telling me this child could topple a billion-dollar empire? Lester looked up. If what she's showing us is accurate, she doesn't just bring it down. She dismantles it piece by piece. But nobody will believe her, Judith stated flatly. Ellie met her gaze. Then they'll have to believe me. That night, while wind pressed against the old house and a distant train whistle echoed across the valley, Ellie sat beside Maya in her bedroom. The girl stared at the ceiling, hands folded over her chest. You didn't do anything wrong, Ellie whispered. What happened to you? That's not your fault. Maya didn't respond. After a moment, her soft voice broke the silence. I used to count the stars. Ellie blinked. What do you mean? Back at the penthouse, Mom and I would lie on the balcony. She'd tell me, count them, sweetheart. Every star has its own name. So, I tried. I reached 372 one night, then she got sick. Ellie felt her throat constrict. She always told me numbers reveal the truth, Maya added. But Daddy said sometimes truth is dangerous, especially when it costs people money. Ellie reached over and gently took Maya's hand. He's wrong. Maya looked at her, a spark of something like hope flickering through the exhaustion in her eyes. Ellie squeezed her hand. Justice isn't about money. It's about doing what's right. And I promise you, we're going to show everyone the truth, even if they don't want to see it. The next morning arrived in gradual layers. First the pale blue light above the hills, then the crow of roosters from neighboring farms, and finally the hiss of coffee brewing on Judith's stovetop. Ellie stood by the window, arms crossed, watching. Maya in the pasture. The girl still wore her oversized sweatshirt, walking quietly among the horses. Noble, the white gelding with a dark scar above his left eye, followed her like a guardian. She doesn't say much, Judith observed softly from behind, setting down a coffee mug. But that horse listens to her like she's speaking gospel. Ellie accepted the coffee and nodded. She doesn't need to raise her voice. Her mind speaks louder than any courtroom witness I've ever encountered. Judith didn't respond immediately. Instead, she watched Maya with a distant expression, the kind that came from old pain, the kind Ellie had learned not to interrupt. After a moment, Judith said, "You're walking into something enormous, Ellie. Preston Hale isn't just powerful. He's protected. Men like him don't lose. They bury things." Ellie turned. "Then let him try to bury me. But he won't bury her." By noon, Ellie and Lester sat in the cluttered study behind the barn, a room that once housed Judith's late husband's veterinary records, but now served as a makeshift command center. Papers, graphs, printouts, and scanned copies of Maya's drawings covered every available surface. Lester leaned forward, brow furrowed, tracing connections with a red pen. "She's documented everything. Offshore transfers, asset misrepresentations, inflated equity valuations. This is a forensic treasure trove." Ellie scanned the drawings. "But it won't matter if we can't find someone willing to listen, someone with authority. You don't just walk into the SEC with a collection of crayon charts and a child's testimony," Lester muttered. "Even if they're accurate, they'll dismiss it as conspiracy theory until they have reason not to." "So what's our next move?" Lester took a deep breath. "We leak it." Ellie blinked. "To the press?" "To the right journalist," he said. "Someone who's been burned before, someone who can smell corruption before the story even crosses their desk. I know someone. Used to cover financial crimes for the Times. Name's Marcus Bell." That night, Ellie typed an encrypted email under a dim yellow bulb, attaching scanned images of Maya's diagrams, a voice recording of Maya reciting the offshore account list, and a note that simply read, "This child was thrown from a bridge by the man behind these numbers. She survived. Now she remembers everything." Within minutes, a reply arrived. "We need to meet in person, alone." The next morning, Ellie drove to the agreed location, a rundown diner an hour south off Route 208, the kind of place with peeling linoleum floors, a broken jukebox, and waitresses who still called everyone Hun. She parked the truck and slipped into a back booth. Marcus Bell was already waiting. Late 40s, black with tired eyes and a voice like gravel. "I thought I was finished chasing ghosts," he said without preamble. "Then I saw those documents." Ellie slid a manila envelope across the table. That's just what she drew from memory. She hasn't even started talking about what she overheard. Marcus opened the folder, flipped through the pages, then looked up slowly. "Who is she?" "Her name's Maya, 7 years old. Preston Hale's adopted daughter. She witnessed too much, so he threw her off a bridge. I pulled her from the river." Marcus didn't flinch. "Hale?" "She saw too much, so he threw her off a bridge. I pulled her out of the river." Marcus exhaled through his nose. "This is legitimate. You've just lit a fuse on a powder keg." "Then let it explode," Ellie said. Back at the ranch, Judith was hanging laundry on the line when she noticed the black SUV parked at the far edge of the road. It hadn't been there earlier. The windows were tinted, the engine silent, but she could feel its presence like a storm gathering beyond the hills. Inside, Maya stood by the living room window, her hands twitching as she recited quietly, "Red folder, line 12, Atlas transfer, wire code B75 4 Isru." Ellie returned just in time for Judith to pull her aside. "There's someone watching the house." Ellie's stomach dropped. They moved Maya to the root cellar, cool, dry, and hidden. Noble stood nearby, restless, pacing along the fence line like he, too, sensed danger. Ellie checked all the locks, then texted Marcus. "They're watching us." The reply came quickly. That was fast. "Then they're scared." "That's good. It means she's telling the truth." Later that night, under the faded glow of the porch light, Ellie sat beside Maya. The girl had been silent for hours, a pencil tucked behind her ear, and her fingers stained with graphite smudges. "I'm sorry," Maya whispered. Ellie blinked. "For what?" "For being a problem. For making everything dangerous." Ellie turned toward her. "Listen, you're not the problem, Maya. You're the reason we can see it, the reason we can fight." Maya hesitated, then said, "Daddy used to say numbers are just tools like hammers. You can build with them or you can hurt people." Ellie nodded, her voice steady. "Then it's time we take that hammer back." As midnight approached and the house settled into stillness, the hidden camera in the barn rafters finally clicked. They had evidence now, not just of numbers, but of fear, of someone watching, of someone desperate to ensure the world never heard what a little girl had to say. But it was already too late. The numbers were out, and the empire had begun to crack. Morning dew clung to grass blades as sunlight spilled across the Turner Ranch, stretching golden fingers over the fields. Maya stood by the fence in Ellie's oversized hoodie, watching Noble. With a distant calm no child should possess. She didn't pet the horse seeking comfort. She simply stood near him like a soldier beside a sentinel, knowing they shared an unspoken burden. Inside the house, Ellie stood barefoot in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, voice low but urgent. "She's not safe here," she said. Lester's gravelly voice came through the speaker. "Neither are you. Preston knows someone talked, and now he's watching. We need more than leaks. We need someone inside that building." Ellie glanced toward the living room where Maya was sketching on the hardwood floor with colored pencils. Her small hands moved swiftly, like muscle memory powered by fear. "We don't need someone inside," Ellie whispered. She was inside. For years. Later that morning, Ellie sat beside Maya with a yellow legal pad. "All right," she said gently. "I need you to help me understand what you remember. Not just drawings or numbers, words, conversations, places, anything." Maya paused, eyes flickering across the ceiling. "Daddy said, keep Helena off the books. If it goes south, I want her clean." Ellie went still. "Helena?" "Helena Whitmore." Maya nodded. "She said she didn't want her name on the funnel accounts, but she still helped. She made the numbers invisible." I asked her what that meant. "And what did she say?" "That the best crime is the one hidden in plain sight." At noon, Lester arrived with a thick manila envelope filled with old SEC files. He spread them across the dining table while Ellie poured coffee. "These are from the 2014 investigation into Hale Capital," he explained. "Back then, Whitmore was just a consultant, but she had fingerprints all over internal communications. The problem was the paper trail went cold." He held up one of Maya's newest sketches. "But with this, look, Maya's labeled the rooms, conference calls, access points, even the passcodes on the whiteboard." Judith, standing nearby, raised an eyebrow. "A 7-year-old remembers whiteboard codes?" "She remembers everything," Ellie said. "She's not just a witness. She's a living archive." Later that evening, a storm began rolling in, clouds darkening, the sky. Wind carrying the scent of rain and urgency. Ellie drove Maya and Noble to the old hay barn for shelter. As thunder rumbled in the distance, Maya sat on a bale of straw cradling her drawing pad. "I miss my mom," she whispered. Ellie looked up from checking the stall doors. "What was she like?" "She wore purple a lot. Said it was the color of strength and sadness. She liked jazz and hot chocolate." Maya hesitated. "One night, I found her crying while holding a letter. It had numbers and big words I couldn't read, but she said it was from Daddy. She said he lied to her face." Ellie knelt beside her. "Is that when she got sick?" "She died 2 months later. Daddy said she just couldn't handle the stress." Ellie felt something cold settle in her chest. Grief wrapped in secrecy. Lies sealed in ink. "Your mom didn't die because of stress, Maya," she said gently. "She died because she knew the truth. And now they're scared that you know it too." That night, rain hammered the roof like a warning. Inside the house, Lester received a text from Marcus Bell. "Leak. Posted. Page live. Reaction incoming." A second message followed. "Someone tried to take it down 12 minutes after posting. That's faster than anything I've seen. They're panicking." Judith closed the curtains. "That means they're desperate." Ellie leaned forward. "It means we're close." The next morning, a black Cadillac was discovered idling just 2 miles from the ranch, empty, engine cold. Inside was a photograph of Ellie and Maya. No note, just the photo folded, creased along Ellie's face. Ellie slammed the door shut, hands trembling. They know who I am now. Lester stared at the photograph for a long time. That's not a threat. Judith looked up. Then what is it? It's a message, he said grimly. They're telling us they're watching and waiting. Later that day, Ellie took Maya for a walk by the riverbank, the same one where they first met. The water flowed peacefully now, concealing its violence beneath. Ripples. Maya clutched a folded paper in her hand. It's a flowchart, she said, of the payments. Every time Daddy got scared, he moved money through a new name. I kept track. Ellie took the page and saw names of firms, some legitimate, some shells, linked like branches of a dying tree. I used to think numbers were safe, Maya murmured. But they hide things. They cover up pain and secrets, and people believe them. Because numbers don't cry. Ellie crouched down beside her. Maybe that's why you're so important, because you remember both the numbers and the pain. That night, Ellie typed another message to Marcus. We're not running. They need to know we're not afraid. The reply came quickly. Then let's go public with her face, her voice, full statement. Are you ready for the world to see her? Ellie looked across the room at Maya, calm, quiet, tracing invisible mathematical patterns on the foggy glass, and, for the first time, Ellie believed it. Yes, the world needed to see her, not because she was a victim, but because she was the key. The wind swept across the Turner Ranch with a hush that felt too intentional, like the world itself had paused to listen. Inside the barn, Ellie stood behind a camera mounted on a tripod. She adjusted the lighting, warm, soft, steady, and then turned toward the child sitting on a stool in front of a white sheet draped against the wall. Maya, 7 years old, sat, with her back straight, knees together, hands resting in her lap like she was posing for a school portrait. But there was no smile. Her face remained unreadable, her eyes too deep for a child who once believed a father's embrace meant safety. Ellie knelt beside her and whispered, Are you sure you're ready for this? Maya nodded once. You don't have to be perfect. Just speak. From here. Ellie touched her chest. You're not alone. I'll be right behind the camera. Judith stood off to the side, arms folded tightly. We don't get a second chance at this, Ellie. One wrong word, and she becomes a target, not a witness. I know, Ellie said. Her voice didn't waver, but her heartbeat did. The red light blinked on. Maya looked into the lens, blinked once, and began. My name is Maya Hale, she said, voice clear like water over stone. I am 7 years old. My father is Preston Hale. He owns Hale Capital. She paused, glanced at Ellie. Ellie gave an encouraging nod. I was adopted by him and Marina Hale, my mom, when I was a baby. She died last year. But before she did, she told me to always tell the truth, even when it hurts, even when no one believes you. Her fingers twitched slightly in her lap. I saw my father lie to people. I heard him say things like, double the forecast and make Helena the ghost name on this one. I remember numbers, all of them, because I don't forget things. My brain saves everything. She held up a piece of paper with childlike handwriting that was astonishingly neat. Names of accounts, dates, wiring details, connections between shell companies. Ellie whispered from behind the camera, Tell them why you're speaking now. Maya took a breath. Because my father tried to kill me. He threw me off a bridge. He said, You ruined everything. But I didn't. He did. And now I'm not afraid anymore. Silence. Then Ellie clicked the camera off. No one moved for several seconds. Even Noble, standing just outside the open barn door, remained still, his ears pricked forward, as if he, too, understood the weight of what had just occurred. Judith was the first to speak. We send that out. The whole world changes. Ellie looked at Maya. And if it doesn't, we change it ourselves. That night, Marcus Bell received the footage in a secure file. By morning, the video was everywhere. It aired on local stations first, small newsrooms that still valued stories over sponsors, then online, then national networks. The headline read, "7-year-old accuses billionaire, father of attempted murder and financial crimes with evidence." Social media erupted. Some voices called Maya a hero. Others called it fake, conspiracy, staged. But the images of her detailed sketches, her whispering the words, "Daddy's office," and the silent grief on her face, those could not be denied. The footage didn't just go viral, it ignited. 2 days later, Hale Capital stock dropped 28%. Helena Whitmore canceled all public appearances. No official statement came from Preston. The man had vanished, disappeared behind lawyers, gates, and silence. Ellie watched it all unfold. From the ranch, arms crossed, face pale. "They're circling the wagons," Lester said, scrolling through financial feeds. "But it's too late. The DOJ's already filed a motion to subpoena internal documents." Judith poured herself tea with shaking hands. "You think it's enough?" "It's never enough," Ellie replied. "But it's a crack, and sometimes that's all you need." That afternoon, while Judith baked cornbread and the air filled with the scent of butter and memory, Ellie sat on the back steps with Maya. "You did something brave," she said, "but you don't have to be brave all the time." Maya stared ahead at the horses. "Do you think he'll come back?" Ellie didn't lie. "He might. Bad people don't always stay gone, but you're not alone anymore." Maya leaned her head against Ellie's shoulder. "I miss her," she whispered. "My mom." "I know," Ellie said, voice soft. "And she would be proud. You honored her more than any courtroom ever could." That night, just after sunset, a drone buzzed low over the field behind the house. Judith saw it first, its blinking red light cutting through the dusk. Ellie ran out, shotgun in hand, but it was gone before she could spot its controller. "It's a warning," Lester said. "They're not going to let this slide." Ellie looked at Maya, asleep on the couch inside, her little fists curled, her face peaceful for once. "No," Ellie said. "They're going to try and break her. But they'll have to go through me first." Judith walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. "Then you better be ready, girl, because this war isn't over. It just made the news." The Turner Ranch had never seen so many reporters. By 7 a.m., 3 satellite trucks lined the gravel road, their antennas spinning like hungry vultures. A string of camera crews stood just outside the fence line, gripping boom mics and shoving microphones toward the gate, as if truth could be harvested like wheat. But inside the house, the mood was the opposite of frenzy. Ellie pulled the curtain aside and stared at them, her jaw tight. "Like moths to a flame," Judith said, sipping her coffee without turning from the stove. "You lit it, baby girl. Now you've got to deal with the heat." Behind them, Maya sat quietly at the dining table, drawing again. Not numbers this time, but the river, the bridge, a figure standing at the railing. Ellie walked over and gently touched her shoulder. "You doing okay?" Maya nodded without looking up. "They're not here for me. They're here for the man who tried to make me disappear." Later that morning, Ellie agreed to a single interview inside the barn, away from Maya, with Marcus Bell. He set up his equipment with the quiet efficiency of a man who knew how to document chaos without fueling it. "I've covered stories in war zones," Marcus said, adjusting his lens. "But this is a battlefield in broad daylight." Ellie folded her arms. "I'm not here to be a hero." "You're already something more dangerous than that," he said. "You're believable." On camera, Ellie spoke plainly. "She's not just a little girl. She's living proof that Preston Hale isn't the man his money claims he is. And if he's watching this, we're not afraid. We won't stop." Off camera, Marcus leaned forward. "They'll come for you now. Not just lawyers, not just threats. People who don't leave fingerprints." Ellie's eyes didn't waver. "Then I'll leave scars." The next night, the power went out. No warning, no storm, just darkness. Judith lit oil lamps without panic. She'd lived through real blackouts back when power lines meant something fragile. But Lester was already checking the fuse box, and Ellie had her hand on the shotgun before the silence even settled. From the back field came a metallic clank. Then a second. Ellie grabbed a flashlight and moved toward the barn, her boots heavy in the wet grass. Noble whinnied sharply, a warning, not fear. Then she saw it. The padlock on the barn gate was clipped clean, its edges glinting under the beam. Footsteps. Behind her. She spun. Shotgun raised. "Wait! It's me!" Lester's voice called out. "The back door sensor just tripped." They both stood there for a second, scanning the dark. No one. Nothing. Just the air, cold and too still. The next morning, a plain brown envelope was found tucked into the feed room, wedged behind the grain sacks. Inside, a single Polaroid photo. Ellie asleep on the couch, taken from inside the house. Judith's hands shook as she stared at it. "That means someone's been in here." Ellie's voice dropped to a near growl. "And they want us to know it." Maya stood silently in the doorway. She didn't cry. She